Hey folks, welcome back. For homework over break, I asked you to complete a brainstorming exercise where you chose your top 3 multimodal genres that you want to tell your story in. That can be anything from interpretive dance to a podcast to a digital storybook using Google Slides, as the sort of pages of your story. Anything, right? But you were supposed to answer a series of questions, and I'm just going to scroll here so that you can return to them and you can see them, right? These are the questions that you were supposed to answer for each one of those multimodal genres. I do want to emphasize that this series of questions is going to sort of haunt us throughout the rest of the semester in the sense that as you are composing your multimodal children's story, I want you to be thinking and actually recording the specific choices that you are making. Whether it's like you are reading a storybook and you decided to wear a certain costume, or what color palette you chose to do your own drawings, or what font you chose to do your storybook. You feel me, right? The idea is that you want to really drill down into the minutia of the choices that you're making and then answer the questions that are listed right here. Okay, so just remember that there was a reason why I asked you all to do that. The first time is just to brainstorm what you think you might want to do, but again, you're going to return to these, all right? So the first thing that I'm going to ask you to do today is I'm going to ask you to pick your top choice. What genre do I want to use to, multimodal genre, do I want to use to tell my story? You'll also want to think about backup plan, all right? The backup plan is just your second favorite of the list that you brainstormed. And that's because sometimes life intervenes and things go sideways, okay? So it's just good to have that in your back pocket. The second thing that you're going to do is you're going to create a detailed project calendar. I do want you to grab yourself an actual calendar, whether that's a digital calendar on your computer or your phone, or whether we are talking about you've written down the dates from here into April, whatever it is that you want to do, right? But what I want you to do is I want you working backwards from April 16th. That's when everyone has to have a full draft of their project for peer review. And by full draft, I mean a full version of your story in the multimodal genre that you chose, right? So whether that's a podcast, or you're doing a magic show, or you're, whatever, you're doing your story on Instagram, whatever the case, right? I want you to work backwards from Thursday, April 16th, which is when everyone has to be ready to submit exchange their projects during peer review, okay? And I also want to point out that you are going to be expected to work on your project for the next 3 class sessions. That's April 2nd, April 7th, and April 9th. Okay, so you'll know that you've got that time in class to do that. And then, really what I want you to keep in mind as you're working backwards is to say, if my goal is to have a complete draft by the 16th, what tasks do I need to complete by April 2nd? What homework am I going to assign for myself, right? What do I need to complete by April 7th? What homework will I assign myself? And then finally, what tasks do you need to assign for yourself on April 9th? And also, what homework will you assign yourself? Okay, so that's what I want you to keep in mind. You might be asking, wait a second, well, why isn't there anything for Tuesday, April 14th? That's because we are doing a writing studio that day, okay? But you can still include Tuesday, April 14th on your calendar as well. That's super duper fine. That's up to you. All right. But the idea is, chunking it out into 3s, or if you want to fold in April 14th, you could have a 4th kind of chunk of time in there. But the idea is you want to think about that and then work backwards. Be like, these are the tasks that I need to complete, right? Whatever that is. Okay. Whether if you're doing a magic show, that might be like, okay, perform it 10 times without, 10 times without video. Make sure that I've got cue cards to know what I'm going to say. And then, have my second best recording of the show done, on the 16th. It's far more detailed than that, but, costumes and such would be involved, props, yada, yada. You get my point, right? You might even do a backdrop, who knows, right? But the idea is you want to think about everything that you're going to need to get done, and then fold that into your project planning calendar, all right? So once you've done that, and that is going to take a while, right? Because sometimes you're like, oh, sure, I know everything that I need to do, and then you don't, right? The reason why it's really important to write it all down is because there are a ton of studies that show that if you write something down, if you plan it out in time, you're that much more likely to actually get the thing done, okay? So that's just a fun project management tip. The very last thing that I want you to do in class is, once you've been like, hey, this is my top multimodal genre, this is my project plan, I want you to go to channel 3 in our Slack space, and I want you to share which multimodal genre you've chosen, what your top choice is, and then, share some of your drafting goals. You don't have to necessarily do everything. You can even talk about what you're planning on assigning yourself for homework so that you're prepared to get the ball rolling for class on Thursday, all those types of things, right? So you're going to tell us the genre that you chose. You're going to say, hey, these are some of the choices that, multimodal choices that I think are really going to help me craft this story. And you're going to explain how the genre might potentially shape your audience's experience of the story that you're telling. And then also just read and respond to your peers and tell them what you like about their multimodal genres. Maybe give them ideas that might help them strengthen how they're conceiving of their project right now, okay? And then again, if you want to fold in some of the homework goals you're assigning for yourself today, that's super, right? All right, so on your homework to-do list, I want you to revisit the project calendar you created for yourself, just in case it's possible that your peers might have given you ideas that you need to fold back into that project calendar. So go ahead and do that. And then the second thing I want you to do is to begin drafting your multimodal fairy tale so that you've got a third of it drafted by the end of class on April 2nd. Okay, that's Thursday. And I also want you to keep in mind that as you're drafting, keep a record of all the multimodal choices that you're making and precisely why you are making them. You are going to have to include them in your one-page single-space reflection for assignment 3. All right. Fourth, and this is sort of the last, but not really. Once you've met those homework goals that you've set for yourself, it's a really good idea to make a little note to yourself, even if it's just bullet points of the next steps that you're going to want to take the next time you return to the project. That way there isn't a time where you're really just stalling because you're like, gee, I don't remember what I was doing, right? So if you write notes to future you, you're going to be in a much better position. Don't you all wish we wrote notes to future us? Anyway, so, and the last thing, right? Contact me if you have any questions. All right. There is one more thing that I do want to point out that I am noticing, and this is just a piece of advice. It's not written down anywhere here, but I have been noticing with some of y'all in the way that you're talking about the fairy tales that you want to revise, particularly if they are classic fairy tales like Cinderella or Beauty and the Beast or Snow White or Sleeping Beauty. You get my deal, right? So sometimes I think folks are returning to Disney movies that they have grown up with as children, and that's fun, but don't do it here. And there's a reason. I'm trying to see if you work. What I want you to do is I want to just really emphasize that you were to have picked like one of those written fairy tales. The reason is because they're short stories. You can see the canvas. You can kind of get a sense of pacing for what happens in that kind of story, right? So you're not necessarily reinventing the wheel, and then you're just revising that text and modifying it so that it's not as stereotypical or reaffirming really crappy archetypes, but you have a sort of template that you can work from. All right. But if you're just pulling from the Disney movies, in a way, you're pulling from thin air, because what I want you to think about is if that Disney script were typed out, that would be pages upon pages upon pages of text, right? They've got hours to tell their story. And really, if you're looking at your canvas, it's more like the difference between hours to the 15 minutes that it might take to read your story. Does that make sense? Or to, or the, 8 minutes that it takes for you to do your performance. Now, granted, there's a lot of performance that comes in the background, but you get my point, right? So that's really it. Just keep in mind that I do want you to be working from your understanding of what it is that you want to do. All right. And then, yeah, I will see you in Slack, and I hope you have a good rest of the day. All right. Bye-bye.